When my dad remarried 6 months after my mom passed away, I thought I could handle it. I really did. I told myself over and over that people grieve in different ways, that he was lonely, that it wasn't my place to judge. But when Carol and her daughter Lily moved into our house, my house, it became clear that my tolerance had a limit. Carol was the complete opposite of my mom. Where mom was quiet and thoughtful, Carol was loud and intrusive. She swept into our home with an air of entitlement, immediately rearranging furniture and replacing small things that didn't fit her taste. The floral curtains my mom had loved, gone, replaced with sleek gray drapes. Mom's collection of antique teacups, packed away and replaced with Carol's crystal figurines that she insisted brightened up the space. And Dad just let it happen. At first, I tried to stay out of their way. I was 27, working remotely as a graphic designer, and had always loved the solitude of our family home. My dad and I had a quiet understanding before Carol arrived. I kept to myself, and he did the same. But Carol was a different force altogether. She didn't understand the concept of boundaries, constantly barging into my room under the guise of just checking in or commenting on how I should liven up my wardrobe. And then there was Lily. A year younger than me, she was everything Carol wanted her to be, sweet, bubbly, and undeniably spoiled. From the moment they moved in, it was as if she had always been a part of the household. My dad doted on her in a way that stung, asking about her day, complimenting her clothes, and even sitting through endless stories about her social media followers and her latest brand collaborations. Meanwhile, I was an afterthought, a shadow in my own home. "I don't mean to intrude," Carol would say, with a saccharine smile that dripped with false sincerity. "But Lily's room is so small. She's used to having more space. Maybe we could move a few things around to make her feel more comfortable." By a few things, she meant my things. One afternoon, I came home from running errands to find that my mother's old sewing room, her sanctuary, filled with half-finished projects and swatches of fabric she had lovingly collected, had been turned into Lily's walk-in closet. My breath caught in my throat as I stood in the doorway, taking in the shelves lined with Lily's designer shoes and handbags. Carol stood beside me, smiling like she had done me a favor. "She needed more space, honey," she said breezily, as if it wasn't a big deal. "It's not like anyone was using it." I wanted to scream that someone had used it, someone who had loved this house more than Carol ever could. But instead, I swallowed the lump in my throat and walked away. My dad, ever the peacemaker, tried to assure me that it was all just temporary. "They're just settling in, Anna," he said one evening over dinner, when I finally confronted him about it. "We have to make some adjustments." Adjustments. Right. It wasn't just the physical changes in the house that got under my skin. It was the way Carol made herself comfortable in every aspect of our lives, insisting on family dinners, taking control of the grocery shopping, and even making suggestions about my career. "You should really think about a corporate job, Anna," she said one morning as I sat in the kitchen, sipping coffee. "Freelancing is fine for now, but you need something stable, something with benefits." I gritted my teeth and forced a smile, unwilling to let her see how much she was getting to me. "I'm doing fine, thanks." And then there was Lily, always lurking, always asking nosy questions. "Why do you spend so much time at home? Don't you have friends?" she asked one day, twirling a strand of her perfect hair. "It must be kind of lonely." I clenched my fists under the table, counting to 10 in my head. It became clear that Carol and Lily weren't just here to stay, they were here to take over. And the worst part? Dad didn't seem to mind. But I did. I minded a lot. It all started on a Saturday morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through emails while sipping my coffee, when Carol waltzed in like she owned the place. Her eyes flickered to the neatly stacked pile of paperwork sitting next to me, the documents I had been organizing regarding my late mother's estate. I should have known better than to leave them out in the open, but it never crossed my mind that she would be interested in something so personal. "What's all this?" she asked, feigning casual curiosity as she picked up one of the papers without waiting for an answer. Her eyes widened slightly as she skimmed the page, and I could see the gears turning in her head. "Life insurance?" I felt my stomach drop. "Yeah," I muttered, reaching for the paper, but she held it just out of my grasp, her expression turning calculating. "Oh, I didn't realize your mom had a policy this generous." Her voice was thick with something between admiration and envy. I snatched the document from her hands and set it down firmly, my pulse quickening. "It's not really any of your business, Carol." She didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled that tight, condescending smile she always wore when she was about to say something audacious. "You know, Anna," she began, leaning against the counter, "this family has been through a lot of changes recently, and I think it's time we start thinking of ourselves as one unit." I stiffened. "What are you getting at?" Carol sighed dramatically, as if I was being dense. "Lily's going to college soon, and things are tight financially. Your dad and I were talking, and we thought it would only be fair if you shared some of that insurance money. After all, we're family now." I nearly choked on my coffee. "Excuse me?" I stared at her, waiting for some sign that she was joking. But Carol's expression remained serious. She crossed her arms, clearly anticipating resistance. "Look, Anna, I know it might seem like a lot, but it's just money. Lily is your stepsister, and she deserves a fair shot at a good education. It would mean so much to your father and me if you contributed." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "That money was meant for me. It's my mother's legacy. I'm not giving a cent of it to Lily." Carol's expression darkened, her voice turning sharp. "Don't be selfish, Anna. Your mom would have wanted you to help your family, wouldn't she?" I shot up from my seat, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. "My mom wouldn't have wanted anything to do with this so-called family," I snapped, "and I'm not giving you or Lily a dime." Just then, my dad walked in, stopping in his tracks at the tension thick in the air. Carol turned to him with a practiced sigh, her voice taking on a wounded tone. "Honey, I was just suggesting that Anna help out with Lily's tuition, but she's being difficult." I looked at him, searching his face for any sign that he'd defend me, but he just stood there, silent. The weight of his indifference hit me like a punch to the gut. "Dad," I said, my voice quieter but no less desperate. "You can't seriously think this is okay." He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. "Anna, it's just... things have changed, sweetheart. Maybe you could consider—" "No!" I cut him off, my chest tightening. "I won't consider it." Carol rolled her eyes, clearly exasperated. "You're being unreasonable, Anna. We're family now, and families help each other." I shook my head, feeling the sting of betrayal more than ever. "Funny," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "I don't remember you being around when my mom was dying." Carol's mouth opened, but before she could retort, I grabbed my papers and stormed out of the kitchen, my heart pounding in my ears. I locked myself in my room, feeling hot tears prick my eyes. Carol could manipulate Dad all she wanted, but I wasn't about to let her take what my mom left me. I had a sinking feeling that this was far from over. Over the next few weeks, Carol's insistence that I share my mother's life insurance money became an unwelcome shadow hanging over my every move. She brought it up constantly at breakfast, during family dinners, even in casual hallway conversations. At first, I tried to ignore her, thinking she would eventually drop it, but Carol wasn't one to let things go. "It's not like you need all of it, Anna," she said one afternoon as I passed her in the living room, where she sat painting her nails. "Think about Lily's future. She has so much potential, and she deserves every opportunity." I gritted my teeth, not bothering to respond. The worst part? My dad still wouldn't take a stand. Whenever Carol broached the subject, he'd sit there, staring at his plate or fiddling with his phone, avoiding my eyes. It was as if he had given up any autonomy in his own household. The man who used to tuck me in at night and assure me he'd always have my back now seemed incapable of standing up to his wife. I knew Carol was ramping up her campaign when she started enlisting Lily in her scheme. "Anna," Lily said one day, blocking my way to the front door, an exaggerated pout on her lips. "I know you don't like me much, but can't we at least act like sisters? I really need help with my tuition." I blinked at her, incredulous. "Act like sisters," I echoed. "You've been here 6 months, Lily. You don't even try to get to know me." She huffed, flipping her perfect blonde hair over her shoulder. "That's not fair. I have tried, but you always shut me out. Look, I know you think I'm spoiled or whatever, but I'm just trying to get an education." I folded my arms across my chest. "You have a dad. Ask him for money." She blinked, looking genuinely surprised by my response. "Dad doesn't have that kind of cash lying around. He and Mom were counting on you to do the right thing." I felt my jaw clench. "The right thing," I repeated slowly. "You mean giving away my money?" Lily's face twisted into an irritated scowl. "It's not just your money, Anna. We're a family now." That word again. Family. They wielded it like a weapon, a convenient excuse to guilt me into submission. I pushed past her and slammed the door behind me, needing fresh air to clear my head. Carol wasn't content to keep the pressure within our house, though. Soon enough, she began painting me as selfish and unreasonable to anyone who would listen. The whispers started with mutual friends, then extended to distant relatives, and even the neighbors. One evening, I ran into Mrs. Abernathy next door while taking out the trash, and she gave me an odd, knowing look. "Anna, honey, I heard about the situation with your stepmom and sister," she said, voice dripping with sympathy. "It's such a shame you're not willing to help out." I nearly dropped the trash bag. "Excuse me?" "Well, Carol mentioned that you inherited a large sum and it could really make a difference for your new sister." I could feel the heat rise in my cheeks. "It's my inheritance," I said sharply, "from my mother." Mrs. Abernathy blinked, clearly taken aback by my tone, and I stormed back inside, my hands shaking with fury. It wasn't enough for Carol to harass me at home. Now she was turning me into the villain to the entire neighborhood. And my dad? He still said nothing. I knew I needed to do something, and fast. I booked an appointment with my mom's lawyer, Mr. Donovan, a kind man in his 50s who had handled all of Mom's affairs after she passed. As I sat across from him in his office, he shuffled through a thick file with my name on it. "Anna, your mother was very clear in her wishes," he said, adjusting his glasses. "You are the sole beneficiary of the life insurance policy. Legally, Carol has no claim to it, no matter what she says." I nodded, exhaling the breath I'd been holding. I just needed to hear it from someone who knows. He gave me a reassuring smile. "Keep the paperwork close, and if they push you further, let them know you're prepared to take legal action." As I left his office, I felt a newfound sense of determination. Carol had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, that I'd cave under pressure, but she had no idea what she was up against. That night, Carol decided to escalate things. She invited several relatives over for dinner, turning it into a spectacle of forced politeness and thinly veiled jabs. Halfway through the meal, she cleared her throat and smiled sweetly. "Anna, darling, have you given any more thought to what we discussed? About helping Lily with college?" Every pair of eyes at the table turned to me. I set down my fork slowly, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Actually, I have, and the answer is still no." Carol's smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "Anna, I just don't understand why you're being so selfish. This is about family." I met her gaze head on. "No, Carol, this is about my mom. That money was meant for me, for my future. I'm not giving it away because you think Lily deserves it more." Lily groaned dramatically. "Ugh, why are you so greedy?" I snapped. "Greedy? You've been here 6 months and have done nothing but take. You took my mom's sewing room, you took over the house, and now you think you can take my money?" My dad finally spoke up, but his voice was weak. Anna, let's not make a scene. I cut him off. You've let this happen, Dad. You've stood by while Carol treated me like a guest in my own home. But this is mine, and I won't let you or anyone else guilt me into giving it up. Carol's face twisted in anger, and for the first time, I saw the mask slip. You ungrateful little brat, she hissed under her breath. I smiled, pulling out the legal documents I had brought home from Mr. Donovan's office and laying them on the table. These say otherwise. I'm the only beneficiary, and if you try anything, I'll make sure you regret it. Carol's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, and my dad looked at the papers like they might catch fire. Lily just scowled, crossing her arms. This isn't over, she muttered. But for the first time in months, I felt in control. I wasn't going down without a fight. I woke up the next morning feeling lighter than I had in weeks. Last night's dinner had been a disaster for Carol and Lily, and for once, I didn't care. The looks on their faces when I laid out the legal documents had been priceless. Carol's smug expression crumbling into barely concealed rage, and Lily's whiny protests falling flat. But I knew better than to think it was over. Carol wasn't the type to back down quietly. Sure enough, as I made my way downstairs, I heard hushed voices in the kitchen. I stopped short at the doorway, listening. She's being ridiculous, Frank, Carol's voice hissed. We need that money, and she's just sitting on it like some dragon-hoarding treasure. My dad's tired sigh followed. Carol, what do you want me to do? It's her money. I peeked inside just in time to see Carol slam her coffee mug down on the counter. She wouldn't even have that money if it weren't for me. I've been running this house since I moved in. What has she done? Sulked in her room? She doesn't deserve it. That was it. I stepped into the kitchen, my voice cold and sharp. Morning, I said, watching Carol flinch. I see you're back at it already. Carol composed herself quickly, flashing me a tight-lipped smile. Anna, sweetie, we were just talking about how we can all work together as a family. Cut the crap, Carol, I snapped, crossing my arms. You're trying to guilt my dad into fighting your battles for you. It's pathetic. Carol's eyes narrowed. You know, Anna, I really thought you'd have more compassion. Lily and I have been through a lot. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, you mean moving into a fully paid house and helping yourself to my mother's belongings? Must be so hard for you. Before Carol could retort, Lily sauntered in, her phone in hand, scrolling absent-mindedly. Ugh! Can we not do this again? Just give us the money, Anna. You don't even have real plans for it. I turned to her, my voice dangerously calm. Not that it's any of your business, but I do have plans. And they don't include funding your influencer dreams. Lily gasped dramatically. Wow, so rude. She turned to my dad. Dad, aren't you going to say something? She's being totally unfair. Dad rubbed the back of his neck, looking anywhere but at me. I think we should all just calm down and talk this out. I let out a bitter laugh. There's nothing to talk about, Dad. I showed you the documents last night. Mom left that money for me. Not for Lily, not for Carol. And honestly, I'm done explaining myself. Carol's mask of fake sweetness cracked entirely. You ungrateful little brat, she spat, stepping toward me. Your father and I have taken care of you, given you a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us? My jaw tightened. You didn't give me anything. This is my home, Carol. You moved in and acted like you owned the place. Carol's face turned red, and for a moment I thought she might explode. Instead, she turned to my dad, her voice taking on that whiny edge I had come to despise. Frank, are you seriously going to let her talk to me like this? I looked at my dad, daring him to take her side. His shoulders sagged, and I saw the years of avoidance etched into his face. Anna, he started weakly, maybe we can find a compromise. I felt something inside me snap. Compromise? My voice was shaking now, not with fear, but with fury. No, Dad. A compromise would have been Carol and Lily respecting me and Mom's memory when they moved in. A compromise would have been you standing up for me instead of letting them walk all over me. I turned back to Carol, my voice firm. I have been patient. I have tried to be civil, but I will not be bullied into giving you money that doesn't belong to you." Carol's lips curled into a sneer. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "You're going to end up alone with nothing." I smiled, feeling a surge of defiance. Better alone than surrounded by leeches. Carol let out an angry huff and stormed out of the kitchen, with Lily trailing behind her, muttering something about how this family sucks. Dad looked at me, his eyes filled with something resembling guilt. "Anna, I shook my head. "Don't. You made your choice." I grabbed my coffee and walked out, leaving him standing there with nothing but regret. Later that evening, I heard Carol on the phone, loudly venting to someone, probably one of her equally entitled friends. "She's impossible, Helen. I did everything for that girl, and she's treating us like strangers." I leaned against the wall outside the living room, listening with a smirk as she continued her rant. "And Frank? He's useless, just sitting there while she walks all over me." Finally, I stepped into the room. "Hey, Carol," I said sweetly, startling her. "I hope you're not planning on staying much longer, because you and Lily should start looking for your own place." Carol's face drained of color. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said coolly. "This is my house, and I want you out by the end of the month." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. But for once, she had no comeback. Dad, who had wandered into the room just in time to hear the exchange, finally spoke up. "Anna, let's not do anything drastic." I turned to him, my voice soft but firm. "Dad, it's already done." I walked away before he could protest, feeling a weight lift off my chest. I was done being the pushover. Carol and Lily could whine and guilt trip all they wanted, but they had underestimated me, and now they were going to face the consequences. The days following my ultimatum were filled with icy silence and passive-aggressive sighs from Carol. She still hovered around the house, acting as if she owned it, but there was something different in her demeanor, an underlying current of panic she couldn't quite hide. Lily, on the other hand, barely acknowledged me, opting instead to sulk in her room, probably plotting her next social media sob story about her evil stepsister. Dad, predictably, avoided the topic altogether. Whenever I entered the room, he'd quickly busy himself with the TV or bury his nose in the newspaper, as if ignoring reality would somehow make it go away. But I wasn't backing down. I had made myself clear. Carol and Lily needed to go, and I wasn't about to let them worm their way out of it. One afternoon, I found Carol sitting in the living room with an open laptop, furiously typing away. I leaned against the doorway and raised an eyebrow. "Looking for apartments?" I asked sweetly. Carol didn't even look up. "Don't be smug, Anna. Your father and I have been discussing options." I scoffed. "Discussing options? There are no options. You need to leave." She snapped the laptop shut and finally looked at me. Her eyes filled with a mix of frustration and something that almost resembled fear. "You're really going through with this, aren't you?" I crossed my arms. "Yes, Carol, I am." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You're going to regret pushing us out. Your father needs me." I tilted my head, studying her. "No, Carol, he doesn't. He just doesn't know how to say no to you." To my surprise, she didn't have a snappy comeback. Instead, she huffed and stormed past me, muttering under her breath about how ungrateful I was. A week later, moving boxes started appearing in Lily's room, and I felt a sense of victory I hadn't experienced in months. It was happening. Slowly but surely, Carol's stranglehold on our house and my life was slipping. One evening, Dad finally gathered the courage to sit me down in the kitchen. He fidgeted with his coffee mug, avoiding my gaze. "Anna, are you sure this is what you want?" I sighed, leaning back in my chair. "Dad, it's not just what I want, it's what I need. I can't live like this anymore. Mom's house, her memory, it's all been taken over, and I've let it happen for too long." His shoulders slumped, and for a moment, I saw the man he used to be, strong, dependable, the man who held my hand at Mom's funeral and promised we'd get through it together. I just wanted things to be easier, he admitted quietly. I reached out, placing my hand over his. I know, but easier doesn't mean better, Dad. He nodded, his eyes glassy, but he didn't argue anymore. And that was enough for me. By the end of the month, Carol and Lily were packed and ready to go. Carol kept her head held high, acting as if leaving was her choice. Lily, of course, made a big show of how I had ruined her life and how she hoped I was happy being a lonely, bitter person. I smiled and waved as they drove away, watching from the front porch with a deep sense of relief washing over me. The house felt different immediately, lighter, quieter, and more like mine. I spent the next few days reclaiming my space, unpacking Mom's old keepsakes, putting her teacups back on the shelves, and replacing the soulless decor Carol had forced upon us. Each little touch felt like a step toward healing. Dad slowly started coming around, too. Without Carol's constant influence, he seemed more like himself. We shared quiet dinners again, watched old movies, and even laughed a little, something I hadn't seen him do in a long time. One evening, as we sat in the living room, he turned to me and said, "Your mom would be proud of you, you know." I smiled, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot." For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt at peace. Carol and Lily were gone, and I had my home and myself back, and I wasn't going to let anyone take it away from me again.